Hello everyone, welcome back to Making a Game, but the top comment decides what I add next. The top comment last time comes from Neko Bridge. Looks like we've got another one of these list comments. The last list comment had about 10 things on it, so 4 seems more manageable. Let's see what we got. 1. Clicker-chan Mascot. 2. More upgrades, maybe for idle time? 3. Fishing minigame. 4. Hard versions of bosses with skins too. Alright, we've got 4 new features to show off today, and let's just start out with the first one, the Clicker-chan Mascot. Now the way we can see Clicker-chan is if I go into the settings and reset the tutorials, let me just click one of these buttons, and here she is. She appears in the corners of the tutorials, and is sort of there meant to represent she's the one reading the tutorials to you and explaining the game's mechanics. And in theme with the comprehensive tutorials, as you progress through the pages of the tutorial, her expression will change as she goes more in depth and gets more serious and more academic about how she's explaining the game mechanics to you. By page 5, she'll have this chalkboard out, seemingly explaining some really complicated stuff. Now, Clicker-chan's design is actually based off of the gnomes from the garden. If you remember from a previous episode, we have these gnomes here that you trade with in the garden, and I've decided to make Clicker-chan a gnome. I thought it would add to the continuity and lead to some unique design decisions, which it definitely did. If I start up another tutorial, maybe go into the settings, you can see the similarities to the gnomes. You know, obviously she's short, she's got that gray hair, and those sort of large feet compared to her short legs. In addition, to fit with the Clicker-chan name, I've given her these sort of Hatsune Miku-esque pigtails. And as far as the rest of the design goes, you can see she wears a skirt that looks suspiciously like the default buttons, and she's got some mouse pointers keeping her hair in that shape, along with some hair dyes that represent orbs and energy, 2 of the important currencies in the game. And that's about it for Clicker-chan. I think the design turned out really well. I hope you all like it as well. And I think this adds a nice bit of character to the game and makes it more fun for everyone playing. Now let's move on to the second item on the list, more upgrades, maybe for idle time. Now you'll notice these upgrades that I've added I've already bought. This is my second time trying to record this. Unfortunately, the recording got messed up the first time. But if we go in here, we can see 2 new upgrades, the points per second and the max idle time. And you'll notice I already have 48 points per second. As you can see, the points are going up by 48 every second over on the left here. And you'll also notice that every time it increases your points, it also increases those points for a random stat. So it's not just making points for the sake of points, you're also getting some stats out of it. And if we sat here for 300 seconds, eventually it would stop, and the way to resume the points per second is to just click any button, and the timer will restart at 300 seconds. Or if you want more than 300 seconds, let's say go up to 360 seconds, 420 seconds, 480 seconds, 540 seconds, 600 seconds, there we go. So now the points per second will last 10 minutes, and you can keep increasing the time depending on how many orbs you want to spend, and keep increasing the points per second depending on how many points you want to spend. Now we can get it up to 52 points per second. And that's about it for the new upgrades. It makes the early game a bit easier, as it can take some time before you're able to beat Ouroboros the first time, so it does help getting the ball rolling in getting to the other parts of the game. Now on to the third thing. Let's show off that fishing minigame. Hello Clicker-chan. We're not going to need you right now, as I'm here to explain the fishing mechanics, but if you ever forget, Clicker-chan will be in game to explain everything for you, of course. And here is the fishing minigame. We've got the blue water here where we're going to be catching our fish, and in the middle of the screen we'll see this big fish button, and we can click it, spend 20 energy, and we'll start fishing. But oops, invalid bait. Seems like first we're going to need to set up some bait. And this is the bait menu. Might look a bit complicated, but the important part is that we've got different ingredients that we can add to it. We have this worm bait, which thankfully we have an unlimited amount of. We can add as much of this as we want. And as you can see, when we add some bait, it adds this little rectangle here and shows this little indicator of how large our bait is. So if I keep adding some worms to it, we can see we've added 5 worms now, and I can also add in other ingredients such as orbs, power-up rocks, cookies, and a new currency which is called fish meat, which of course you get from fishing. Now as you might notice, I don't have any power-up rocks or cookies, but I've still added them to the bait, and so if we try to fish now, we can see we still have an invalid bait since I don't have enough power-up rocks and don't have enough cookies. So if we remove these 2 things, our bait should now be valid and we can begin fishing. Let me get out of this menu now. And we can see some fish start swimming in from the right side of the screen. Every fish in the game has a specific bait minimum. So if the ingredients you use in your bait don't meet the minimum for that fish, it will not be interested in the bait and it will keep swimming off to the left side of the screen. Oh, it looks like this little guy's been interested and we can catch him. It looks like we've caught a fish and we've gotten 1 fish meat and 1 orb. And so now we can claim our rewards. And we've gone back up to 3 fish meat after using 1, and back up to 2,416 orbs after spending 1. So we really didn't gain or lose anything there, but thankfully, each fish has its own rewards that it gives. So to summarize, each fish has its own requirements. Let's say, for example, a fish needed at least 3 power-up rocks to be in the bait for it to be interested. If you don't have at least 3 power-up rocks, then it will not be interested. But then if you did put in those 3 power rocks, and the fish was interested, and it grabbed the bait, then you might get another reward, maybe more power-up rocks, maybe some cookies. It's up to you to discover what each fish likes and what its rewards are, and maybe some interesting strategies could emerge around the fishing. We'll just have to wait and see. Now I do want to explain a little more how the fishing mechanics work. So as you saw with that last fish, it decided to turn around and then run towards our bait. The way that works is that if it's interested, oh, you went a bit faster, I didn't have time to explain. And here we've caught another fish. This one gave us 1 fish meat and 2 orbs, so it's a little better than that first fish. We actually made a profit on orbs there. Now, if fish are interested, they will turn around while swimming. Sometimes. Sometimes they'll keep going anyways. It's just based on the random nature of the fish. But if they do turn around, they then decide whether or not to go after the bait based on a friendliness value that is specific to each fish. So let's say this fish, for example, might turn around here. And if it does, I believe this one has a 30% chance to be interested in the bait. And oh, looks like that one's not even going to turn around. But we caught this one before, maybe it'll turn around? Oh, this one turned around, interesting. Now we've caught this fish. Got 2 fish meat and 50 energy. That's cool. And as I was saying, each fish has a set chance of going after the bait, even if it's interested. So some fish, even if you use the right bait, they might turn around and then just go off the right side of the screen and never actually grab it. But if you keep fishing, eventually you'll catch something, since a new fish will show up that'll grab your bait. You just need to be careful and think fast and click it before the fish gets away with the bait. Let me show what a failed fishing would look like, for example. So if this fish would grab it and we do nothing, we'll pop up and down a few times and swim away with our bait. And then we don't get that bait back, we can see we've lost some fish meat. Well, we gained it from that other fish, then it went back down to 3. So we're back down to 3 fish meat. If the fish gets away with the bait, then you gotta start all over. You get nothing. So make sure you're being patient and paying attention, and you'll catch a lot of fish. Now we can move on to the 4th and final feature of this update, the hard versions of bosses. So if we go into the boss fight menu, it's getting a bit crowded now with all these buttons, but as you can see, there's a button here that says normal. This means we're currently on the normal version of the boss, Ouroboros, and once you defeat a boss for the first time, this button will appear, and you'll be able to challenge the hard version of the boss. So now I've got Super Ouroboros, and as I said earlier, this is the 2nd time recording this. So we've beaten Super Ouroboros once, so now it's on Super Ouroboros 2, and you'll notice that this is tracked separately from regular Ouroboros, which I've beaten 25 times. And you'll also notice the fight button is different, since each boss uses the skin you unlock for getting 10 wins on that boss as its fight button. So the hard versions have different buttons as requested. Another thing about these hard mode bosses is that their stats are 100 times higher than the regular boss. As you can see, after defeating it once, its stats are already 22,000 damage and 2.2 million health. However, my stats are pretty high, so I think I can take these bosses on. But the changes don't end there. Each boss also has a unique design and new mechanics. So let's go in and see what Super Ouroboros has to offer. First thing you'll notice about Super Ouroboros is the new 3D spinning design that we've got. Rather than being the single giant orb, Super Ouroboros now has multiple smaller orbs poking out of it. Now if we attack, we can see the spin goes as normal, and now instead of our dodge button, we have the drag hitbox from Lorelia's fight, which does allow you to more easily maneuver, but because of that, I've also added a new secondary attack. If I get the health down enough, there we are, right on cue. We have this new flurry attack, I call it, where we have 8 extra orbs fly out from Ouroboros and come after your hitbox, which makes it pretty hard to attack while that's going on. Now let me see if I can win against Super Orboboros here. And I have defeated Super Orboboros. Now the rewards are the same as the regular boss, however, you get the rewards again. So if you beat both versions of a boss 20 times, you get double the rewards you'd get by just beating the boss normally. And then after 10 times beating Super Orboboros, you would of course unlock this button here. Now let me quickly showcase the other bosses' hard versions. For Stormius, we have Dark Stormius, and Dark Stormius actually adds an anti-auto clicker. So if I click this button really fast, you can see the health goes down fairly quickly. However, if I use an auto clicker, for example, I'm using an auto clicker that will click the button as fast as possible. You can see the damage isn't really being dealt that much faster, and I died because I couldn't do damage fast enough before the projectiles hit me. Now the way this works is pretty simple. It just limits your clicks to 5 clicks per second, or 1 click every 0.2 seconds. And if you click before the cooldown's done, it will just not process your click until that cooldown's done, at which point it will do the click. So it's pretty easy to get to the maximum of 5 clicks per second, but it'll only quote-unquote queue 1 click at a time, so you still have to be clicking it in order to keep doing damage. The other thing new with Dark Stormius is a different behavior of the lightning bolts at 1/3 health. Rather than getting faster, they will erratically change directions. As you can see here, they start changing directions every second or so, and they make them harder to hit and also more unpredictable. Like, I don't know if any one of these is going to hit my hitbox, so I gotta, yep, and there it goes, without even seeing it coming. So I think this makes it a bit more tricky. And now moving on to Cloak's hard mode boss, we have Veil. Now with Veil, you'll immediately notice the eyes are on buttons they should not be on. With Cloak, the buttons would only appear on the buttons that were specific to Cloak, which made it easy to tell which one the eyes were on and which ones they weren't on. However, with Veil, that's no longer the case, as any button can have an eye appear on it, like we got the orb button here. So let me start the fight. Here's another one. We have an eye on the default button. And so that's the main change, but there's a second change in that if I click on an eye, it will cover up any buttons that I've opened. And so I'll have to open them again, hopefully I remember where any buttons are, and if not, it'll make it just a little trickier to win. And that's about it for Veil, but I think it does make it a bit trickier, since it was kind of easy to avoid the eyes before. So now if you're clicking ones at the edge of the screen too quickly, you might find some difficulty. And that's it for Veil. Now on to our last boss. Lorelia's hard mode version is called Rosetia, and get ready for this. Rather than being a ancient scroll, we have an ancient stone being here with a green eye rather than a purple one. And so the difference here is pretty simple. I've just made Rosetia's attack stronger than Lorelia's. So as you can see, the lore drop attack shoots out 2 pieces of lore rather than 1, which is good if you like lore, and bad if you like not getting hit. And the finger attack, well, now they're obviously stone because of these stone hands, but we also have now 8 of these fingers flying around instead of 4. And I've done this with every attack, double the projectiles, except for the first attack, since that one's already hard enough. But as you can see, the Eye Blast attack now shoots the eyes twice as quickly, making them harder to avoid. And it might still seem pretty easy, but of course these attacks build up off of each other, so if you're dealing with 3 at once, it can be rather tricky. And that's about it for the hard mode bosses. And now let me just defeat Rosetia so I can move on to the outro here. Ah, shoot. Alright, well, I lost. Anyways, that's all for this video. If you have any suggestions for what I should add next, leave them in the comments below. The comment that gets the most likes will decide what I add in the next video. Be sure to like other people's comments too, not just your own, and maybe like the video. I'll see you next time.